Captain Riley Hartman once flew faster than sound through enemy fire to save 12 soldiers. Today, she pushes paper at a Pentagon desk. The Hartman family wall displays 4 generations of military heroes: great-grandfather's Flying Tiger's wings, grandfather's Destroyer Command, father's Special Operations medals, her brother's Purple Heart. All earned following orders. Riley earned her grounding by breaking them. When the most dangerous rescue mission in decades demands the impossible, sometimes the military's greatest liability becomes its last resort. Riley Hartman stared at the computer screen showing flight patterns over the Pacific. Numbers and coordinates filled the monitor. Outside her Pentagon office window, F-16s practiced formation flying. She watched them bank left in perfect synchronization. Missing the sky again? She turned. Lieutenant Martinez stood in the doorway holding 2 cups of coffee. "Just checking weather patterns," Riley said, minimizing the flight display. Martinez set a cup on Riley's desk. "You know those are training flights, right? Not weather." "I know what they are." The office felt smaller every day. Riley's desk sat wedged between filing cabinets and a broken printer. On the wall behind her, 4 framed photos caught the morning light. Her great-grandfather in his Flying Tiger's jacket, grinning beside a P-40 Warhawk. Her grandfather on the bridge of his destroyer, ocean spray frozen in the background. Her father in desert camouflage, Special Operations wings gleaming on his chest. Her brother Tommy in marine dress blues, 19 years old and proud. All of them had followed orders. All of them had been heroes. "Any word on your appeal?" Martinez asked. Riley shook her head. "Colonel Webb says the review board won't meet until next month." "That's bureaucracy for you. That's punishment for you." 3 months ago, Riley had been flying combat missions over hostile territory. Squadron leader. Top pilot scores. Recommended for promotion. Then came the mission that changed everything. The rescue had been perfect. 12 soldiers trapped behind enemy lines, surrounded, taking heavy fire. Riley's squadron was assigned to bomb an ammunition depot 15 miles away. Standard procedure. Follow the flight plan. Complete the mission. Return to base. But Riley had heard the radio chatter. The soldiers were dying. Air support was 20 minutes out. Too long. She had broken formation. Ignored direct orders. Flown through a canyon the flight manual said was impossible to navigate. Used her F-35's stealth capabilities in ways that hadn't been tested. Came in low and fast, drawing enemy fire while her wingmen laid down suppressing fire from above. All 12 soldiers made it home. Riley got grounded. "Captain Hartman?" A voice called from the hallway. "You have a visitor." Colonel Webb appeared in the doorway. Martinez straightened, coffee cup halfway to her lips. "At ease, Lieutenant. Could you give us a moment?" Martinez nodded and slipped out, closing the door behind her. Webb looked tired. Dark circles under his eyes. His uniform was wrinkled like he'd slept in it. "You look terrible, Marcus." "Thanks. You always knew how to boost morale." He sat in the chair across from her desk. "We have a situation." Riley leaned back. "We?" "I analyze flight data now. Remember? 2 4-star generals were captured 6 hours ago." That got her attention. "Where?" "Eastern Theater. Diplomatic mission went sideways. Generals Hayes and Chen are being held in a compound about 40 miles behind enemy lines." Riley knew that terrain. Mountainous. Heavily defended. She'd flown reconnaissance over those exact coordinates during her unauthorized surveillance flights. The ones that had helped get her grounded. "What's the extraction plan?" Webb rubbed his forehead. "That's the problem. Every simulation shows the same result. Heavy casualties. Low success probability. The terrain is a nightmare. Anti-aircraft batteries everywhere. Natural choke points that funnel aircraft into kill zones. So what do you need from me? Flight analysis? Tactical recommendations? I need you to stay out of it. Riley stood up. Excuse me? Don't get any ideas, Riley. I know how your mind works. This isn't your mission. You're grounded for good reason. Those soldiers I saved would disagree. Those soldiers you saved nearly got you killed. Along with your wingmen. Along with everyone else who would have had to come rescue you if your crazy canyon run had failed. Riley walked to the window. The training jets were landing now, one by one, following proper approach patterns. Who's running the rescue? Special operations. Best we have. And if they fail? Webb was quiet for a moment. They won't fail. But his voice carried no conviction. Riley turned from the window. How long until the generals are moved? Intelligence says 18 hours. Maybe less. To where? Mountain Fortress. Impregnable. If they get there, we'll never see them again. Riley sat back down. On her computer screen, the weather report showed clear skies over the Pacific. Perfect flying conditions. Marcus, those surveillance photos I took during my unauthorized flights. Don't. The compound where they're holding Hayes and Chen. I know those defenses. Riley, I'm warning you. I mapped every gun position. Every radar installation. Every blind spot. Webb stood up. And that unauthorized intelligence gathering is part of why you're sitting in this office instead of a cockpit. Riley opened her desk drawer and pulled out a folder. Black and white photos spilled across the desktop. Aerial reconnaissance images. Gun emplacements. Radar towers. Mountain passes. Tell me you have better intelligence than this, she said. Webb stared at the photos. His jaw tightened. On the wall, for generations of Hartmans watched in silence. Heroes who had followed orders. Heroes who had trusted the system. Riley wasn't sure she could be that kind of hero anymore. The phone on her desk rang. Webb reached for it. Colonel Webb. His face went pale. When? How many? I see. He hung up and looked at Riley. First extraction team just went down. The Pentagon's command center hummed with activity. Banks of monitors displayed satellite feeds from the operation zone. Riley stood in the back, arms crossed, watching Webb coordinate rescue attempts from the central console. Raven team, you are cleared for approach, Webb spoke into his headset. Target compound is 2 clicks north of your position. On the main screen, thermal imaging showed 8 Special Forces operators moving through mountain terrain. Their heat signatures glowed white against the cold ground. Admiral Thompson stood beside Webb, studying the display. How long until they reached the compound? 15 minutes, Webb replied. Extraction window is tight. Intelligence shows enemy forces are already preparing to move the generals. Riley watched the operators navigate narrow mountain paths. She knew this terrain. Every ridge. Every valley. Every defensive position. Colonel, one of the communications officers called out. Enemy radar is painting Raven team. Webb leaned forward. Raven team, you have active radar lock. Execute evasive maneuvers. The thermal signatures scattered, seeking cover behind rocks and trees. Red dots appeared on the screen, moving toward the operators' positions. Enemy patrol, 6 hostiles approaching from the north, the comm officer reported. Gunfire erupted through the radio speakers. Sharp cracks echoed in the command center. Riley counted muzzle flashes on the satellite feed. Raven 6 is down, came a voice through the static. We're taking heavy fire from concealed positions. Fall back to Rally Point Alpha, Webb ordered. Medical extraction inbound. More red dots appeared on the screen. Dozens of them, converging on the operators' positions. Sir, they're being flanked, Martinez whispered to Riley. Look at the eastern approach. Riley saw it too. Enemy forces moving through a canyon she recognized. The same canyon she'd flown through 3 months ago. They knew the operators were coming. "Raven team, abort mission," Admiral Thompson ordered. "Repeat, abort and extract immediately." 20 minutes later, the surviving operators were airborne in medical helicopters. 3 wounded. 1 dead. Webb pulled off his headset and stared at the main screen. "Next option," Admiral Thompson said. "Stealth helicopters," Webb replied. 2 Blackhawks, modified for low radar signature. Night insertion. Riley moved closer to the central console. "Admiral, if I could make a suggestion." "You could make a suggestion from your office, Captain," Thompson replied without looking at her. Webb shot her a warning glance. Riley stepped back. 6 hours later, the command center was quieter. Most of the day shift had gone home. Riley remained in the back corner, studying satellite feeds on a portable tablet. The stealth helicopters showed as faint blips on the radar display. "Ghost 1, you are 10 minutes from target," Webb's voice was hoarse from hours of coordination. "Copy that, Control. Beginning final approach." Riley zoomed in on her tablet display. The helicopters were following a standard insertion route. Predictable. Exactly what enemy commanders would expect. "Ghost 2, I'm reading multiple heat sources around the landing zone," came a pilot's voice. "Confirm, Ghost 2. "How many?" "At least 30. Maybe more. They're waiting for us." Riley stood up. She recognized those heat signatures. Anti-aircraft positions she'd photographed during her unauthorized flights. Surface-to-air missile batteries positioned in exactly the right locations to cover all standard approach routes. "Admiral," she called out. "Not now, Captain." "Sir, those helicopters are flying into a trap." Thompson turned around. "Excuse me?" "The enemy positions. I've seen them before. They have overlapping fields of fire covering every conventional approach route." "Ghost 1, Ghost 2, execute evasive maneuvers," Webb ordered. Multiple missile locks detected. On the screen, bright streaks of light rose from the mountains. Surface-to-air missiles tracking toward the helicopters. "Taking evasive action," Ghost 1 replied. "Deploying countermeasures." The first helicopter disappeared in a bright flash. The second banked hard right, but another missile found its target. 2 fireballs lit up the mountainside. Silence filled the command center. "Ghost 1, Ghost 2, please respond," Webb said into his headset. Static answered him. Admiral Thompson walked to the main display. "Casualties?" 12 aircrew, the communications officer reported. "No survivors detected." Riley felt sick. She pulled out her unauthorized surveillance photos and spread them on a nearby table. Each photo showed missile positions, radar installations, gun emplacements. Every defensive measure that had just killed 12 American servicemen. Martinez approached her. "Are those from your restricted flights?" "Yes." "You knew this would happen?" Riley nodded. The terrain funnels aircraft into predetermined kill zones. Standard approach routes become shooting galleries. Webb walked over, his face grim. "What's the third option, Admiral?" "Drone strikes," Thompson replied. "Surgical precision. Take out the defensive positions, then send in extraction teams." Riley looked at her photos. "That won't work either." "Why not?" Webb asked. "Mobile launchers. They move positions every 4 hours. By the time drone strikes reach target coordinates, the weapons will be somewhere else." "How could you possibly know that?" Riley pointed to sequential photos showing the same locations at different times. "I took these over 3 separate flights. Same defensive positions, different equipment locations. They rotate continuously." Webb studied the photos. "When did you take these?" 6 months ago. During my unauthorized reconnaissance missions. The ones that got you grounded. The ones that might save those generals." Admiral Thompson approached the table. "Captain, Are you saying you have intelligence that could affect this mission? Yes, sir. Intelligence gathered in violation of direct orders? Yes, sir. Thompson picked up one of the photos. It showed a narrow canyon with steep walls, barely wide enough for aircraft passage. What's this? A blind spot in their defensive network. Too narrow for conventional aircraft, but what, Captain? Riley looked at Webb, then at Admiral Thompson. But not too narrow for an F-35 flying nap of the Earth through the canyon floor. That's impossible, Webb said. The flight manual specifically prohibits canyon flying below 500 feet. I've done it before. And nearly got yourself killed. And saved 12 soldiers. Admiral Thompson set down the photo. How long until the generals are moved? Webb checked his watch. 8 hours. Maybe less. Do we have any other options? The command center was quiet except for the hum of electronics and the distant sound of air conditioning. On the main screen, satellite imagery showed the mountain compound where 2 of America's top generals waited for rescue or execution. Riley gathered her photos. There is one option left. What's that? Thompson asked. Riley looked at the wall display showing current squadron assignments. Her name appeared nowhere on the active duty roster. The pilot you grounded. Webb shook his head. Riley, don't do this. Do what? Tell the truth? Those generals are going to die unless someone flies a mission that breaks every safety protocol in the book. And you're volunteering? I'm stating facts. You need someone who knows those defensive positions. Someone who's flown that terrain. Someone willing to take risks the manual says are impossible. Admiral Thompson studied her face. And someone who's already proven she can't follow orders. Someone who's already proven she can get the job done. The 3 officers stood around the table covered with unauthorized intelligence photos. Outside, the sound of jet engines roared overhead as night patrol flights launched into the darkness. Sir, Webb said quietly, maybe we should consider all available options. Riley's office felt different at 3 in the morning. Quieter. The overhead lights hummed softly. Outside her window, the Pentagon's corridors were empty except for security guards making their rounds. She had spread her surveillance photos across every available surface. Her desk. The floor. Even taped some to the walls. Each image told part of a story about enemy defensive capabilities that no one else had bothered to gather. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Come in. Webb opened the door and stepped inside, carefully avoiding the photos scattered on the floor. He carried 2 cups of coffee and looked like he hadn't slept. Burning the midnight oil? Someone has to. Riley pointed to a series of photos showing the same location at different times. Look at these. Radar Station Alpha 7. Here's the installation on Tuesday. Here it is on Friday. And here's Sunday. Webb knelt down and studied the images. They're moving the entire radar rig. Every 3 days. Like clockwork. But watch this. She pulled out another set of photos. Gun emplacement Charlie 2. Same pattern, but different timing. They rotate defensive positions on overlapping schedules. How many flights did you make to gather this intelligence? 15. Over 6 weeks. Webb stood up and rubbed his eyes. 15 unauthorized flights. Riley, do you understand what that means for your career? My career's already over. Those generals are what matter now. Admiral Thompson is considering your proposal. Riley looked up from the photos. And he's terrified. You're asking him to authorize a mission that violates every safety protocol we have. Using a pilot who's been grounded for breaking direct orders. Flying an approach that our own flight manual says is impossible. It's not impossible. Difficult, yes. Dangerous, absolutely. But not impossible. Webb sat in her chair and took a long drink of coffee. Walk me through it. Riley moved to her computer and pulled up a topographical map. The mountain compound appeared as a small rectangle surrounded by concentric circles representing defensive zones. Standard approach routes come from the north, south, or west. All three directions funnel aircraft through natural choke points here, here, and here. She pointed to narrow valleys between mountain peaks. The enemy has concentrated their anti-aircraft assets to cover these approaches. What about the eastern approach? Sheer cliff face. No aircraft can climb fast enough to clear the ridge while carrying enough fuel for the return trip. Webb leaned forward. But there's a canyon. Runs east to west, directly under their radar coverage. Too narrow for conventional aircraft. Walls are maybe 50 feet apart at the bottom. And you want to fly through that. At treetop level. Using terrain-following radar. F-35 stealth capabilities would mask our approach until we're right on top of the compound. How do you extract the generals from a 50-foot wide canyon? Riley pulled out another photo. This one showed a small clearing inside the canyon, maybe 100 yards from the compound's eastern wall. Emergency landing zone. Natural clearing, just big enough for vertical landing and takeoff. F-35B can hover like a helicopter when needed. Webb studied the photo. That clearing can't be more than 60 feet across. 73 feet. I measured it. Margin of error? About 18 inches on each side. Webb was quiet for a long moment. Riley, that's not a rescue mission. That's a suicide mission. Those generals are going to be executed if we don't do something. And you're going to be killed if we do. Riley looked at the family photos on her wall. For generations of military service. All of them had faced impossible odds at some point. Her great-grandfather flying against Japanese Zeros over Burma. Her grandfather commanding a destroyer against enemy battleships in the Pacific. Her father leading special operations teams behind enemy lines. Her brother Tommy had died trying to save his squad in an ambush. He could have retreated. Could have waited for backup. Instead, he'd charged an enemy machine gun nest to buy his Marines time to escape. 3 of them made it home because Tommy didn't. Marcus, I need to tell you something about those unauthorized flights. I'm listening. They weren't just about gathering intelligence. I was looking for my brother. Webb set down his coffee cup. What do you mean? Tommy's unit was operating in that sector when they were ambushed. His body was never recovered. For months after he died, I kept thinking maybe he was still out there. Maybe captured. Maybe injured and hiding. So you flew reconnaissance missions. I flew hope missions. Looking for any sign that Tommy might still be alive. Riley walked to the window. Dawn was beginning to break over the Pentagon parking lot. Early morning joggers appeared on the sidewalks outside. I never found him. But I found something else. I found every defensive position, every radar installation, every weakness in their security network. Intelligence that could save American lives. Intelligence that got you grounded. Intelligence that could get those generals home. Webb joined her at the window. You know what this mission really is, don't you? A rescue operation. A chance for you to finish what Tommy started. To save people who can't save themselves. Riley turned from the window. The surveillance photos covered her office like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. Each image showed a part of the larger picture. Together, they revealed something no one else had seen. I know those mountains better than anyone in the Air Force. I know their defensive capabilities. I know their blind spots. And I know that canyon. You also know it could kill you. Everything could kill me. That's what makes it worth doing. Webb picked up one of the photos showing the narrow canyon approach. What do you need? An F-35B configured for vertical landing. Full fuel load. And a wingman who won't ask too many questions. Martinez? She's good. Young, but good. And she trusts me. More than she should, probably. Riley gathered the photos from her desk. Maybe. But trust is what gets people home alive. Webb walked toward the door, then stopped. Riley? Yeah? Those 15 unauthorized flights. They weren't just about Tommy, were they? Riley looked at her brother's photo on the wall. Marine dress blues. 19 years old and smiling. No. They were about proving that the Hartman family doesn't leave people behind. Webb opened the door. I'll talk to Admiral Thompson. And if he says no? Then we follow orders and watch two good generals die in a foreign prison. Webb left, closing the door behind him. Riley sat alone in her office, surrounded by unauthorized intelligence that might save lives or end her career. Outside, the sun climbed higher over Washington. Somewhere in the mountains, two American generals waited for rescue that might never come. Riley picked up her phone and dialed Martinez's number. Sarah? It's Riley. I need you to meet me in briefing room 7 in 1 hour. What's going on? We might have a mission. Briefing room 7 sat in the Pentagon's basement level. No windows. Gray walls. Fluorescent lights that buzzed like angry insects. Riley arrived first and spread her surveillance photos across the conference table. Martinez walked in 10 minutes later, carrying a tablet and looking confused. Riley, what's this about? I checked the flight schedule. Neither of us has any missions today. Sit down, Sarah. Martinez took a seat across from the photos. She picked up one showing the mountain compound. This is the target zone where those special forces teams got hit. And where those helicopters went down, Riley added. You took these pictures? During my unauthorized flights. Martinez set down the photo. The flights that got you grounded. The flights that might save two generals. The door opened. Webb entered, followed by Admiral Thompson and a woman Riley didn't recognize. Short gray hair. Navy uniform with captain's bars. She carried a thick manila folder. Captain Martinez, this is Captain Foster from Naval Intelligence, Thompson said. Everything discussed in this room is classified. Foster opened her folder and pulled out a series of documents. Captain Hartman, we've reviewed your surveillance photographs. Impressive work. Thank you, ma'am. Also completely unauthorized and grounds for court-martial. Riley kept her expression neutral. Yes, ma'am. Thompson sat at the head of the table. Captain Hartman has proposed a rescue mission using intelligence gathered during her unauthorized flights. Colonel Webb believes it's our best option. Captain Foster has concerns. Foster spread out several official reports. 2 special forces teams have failed. 2 stealth helicopters have been shot down. 16 American servicemen are dead. The enemy clearly has sophisticated defensive capabilities. Which I've mapped in detail, Riley said, pointing to her photographs. Using methods that violated direct orders. Martinez looked between Riley and Foster. Ma'am, if Captain Hartman's intelligence is accurate, shouldn't that matter more than how she got it? Foster turned to Martinez. Captain, do you understand what you're being asked to do? Support a rescue mission. Support a suicide mission flown by a pilot who has already proven she can't follow orders. Riley stood up. Ma'am, with respect, following orders got those other teams killed. Excuse me? Standard operating procedures. Conventional approaches. Predictable tactics. The enemy knew exactly what we were going to do because we always do the same thing. Thompson leaned forward. Continue, Captain. They've studied our methods. They know our flight patterns, our insertion routes, our extraction procedures. Every mission we've run followed the same playbook. Foster opened another document. The playbook exists for good reasons. Safety. Coordination. Mission success. Mission success? Riley walked to the wall map showing the target area. 16 dead Americans. 2 failed extractions. 0 mission success. And your plan is different how? Riley traced her finger along the canyon route on the map. Because it doesn't follow the playbook. Because it uses terrain and tactics they won't expect. Webb cleared his throat. Admiral, we're running out of time. Intelligence shows the generals will be moved in 6 hours. Thompson checked his watch. Captain Hartman, explain your mission profile. Riley moved to the table and pulled out specific photographs showing the canyon approach. Single aircraft insertion. F-35B configured for vertical landing. Approach from the east through this canyon, flying below radar coverage. Land in this clearing, extract both generals, vertical takeoff and return through the same route. Wingman support? Foster asked. Captain Martinez provides overwatch and communications relay from standard altitude outside the canyon. Martinez studied the photos. Riley, that canyon is maybe 60 feet wide. 73 feet. With an F-35 wingspan of 35 feet, that gives you 19 feet on each side. 18.5 feet. I measured. Foster shook her head. This is exactly the kind of reckless thinking that got you grounded in the first place. Riley pulled out another photo. This one showed a different location. A valley with burned wreckage scattered across the ground. This is where my brother Tommy died. His unit was ambushed here. They followed standard procedures. Set up defensive positions according to the manual. Called for backup through proper channels. She set down the photo. Tommy died because the enemy knew our procedures better than we did. The room was quiet. Thompson picked up the photo of the ambush site. How does this relate to the current mission? Same sector. Same enemy commanders. Same tactical knowledge of American military procedures. Riley pulled out the final photograph. It showed the narrow canyon from above, with markings indicating the flight path. This route doesn't appear in any flight manual. It violates safety protocols. It ignores standard operating procedures. Which is exactly why it might work, Webb said quietly. Foster gathered her documents. Admiral, I cannot recommend authorizing this mission. The risk factors are unacceptable. What are the risk factors for doing nothing? Riley asked. Captain Hartman, you are out of line. 2 dead generals. Critical intelligence in enemy hands. Strategic capabilities compromised across the Pacific Theater. Thompson stood up. Everyone except Captain Hartman, please step outside. Foster, Webb, and Martinez filed out of the room. Thompson waited until the door closed. Captain, I need to ask you something, and I need a straight answer. Yes, sir. Is this mission about rescuing those generals, or about proving you were right to break orders 3 months ago? Riley looked at the surveillance photos scattered across the table. Months of unauthorized flights. Risks taken without permission. Intelligence gathered outside proper channels. Both, sir. That's an honest answer. It's the only answer I have. Thompson walked to the map on the wall. You know one of those generals personally. Sir? General Hayes. She was the reviewing officer who recommended your grounding. Riley felt the air leave her lungs. I don't understand. Thompson opened a file folder and handed her a document. Official letterhead. Hayes's signature at the bottom. General Hayes wrote the flight protocols you violated during your unauthorized rescue. She also wrote the recommendation that led to your grounding. Riley read the document. Cold, clinical language describing her pattern of insubordination and disregard for established safety procedures. She called your methods dangerous and unsuitable for military aviation. So the general I'm supposed to rescue is the one who destroyed my career. The question is, Captain, does that change your willingness to risk your life to save hers? Riley set down the document and looked at her brother's photo in her wallet. Tommy smiling in his marine dress blues. No, sir. It doesn't. Thompson nodded. I thought you'd say that. He walked to the door and opened it. Colonel Webb, please bring the others back in. The group reassembled around the conference table. Thompson remained standing. Mission is authorized. Captain Hartman will pilot the rescue. Captain Martinez will provide overwatch and communication support. Launch in 4 hours. Foster gathered her papers. Admiral, I want my objections noted in the official record. Noted, Captain. Riley began collecting her photographs. Her hands were steady, but her mind was racing. Martinez approached her. Riley, are you sure about this? No. But I'm sure about what happens if we don't try. Webb handed her a mission folder. Pre-flight briefing in 2 hours. Aircraft will be ready in 3. Riley tucked the folder under her arm and headed for the door. Captain Hartman, Thompson called. She turned around. Bring them home. Yes, sir. Outside the briefing room, Riley walked toward the flight preparation area. In 4 hours, she would either be a hero or a cautionary tale. Either way, she would finally know if the Hartman family tradition was worth keeping alive. The F-35B Lightning sat on the tarmac like a sleeping predator. Gray skin reflected the pre-dawn lights. Riley walked around the aircraft, checking every panel, every sensor, every weapon mount. Her crew chief followed behind her with a clipboard. Fuel load is maximum. All systems green. Vertical landing configuration tested and ready, he said. Communications? Encrypted radio, satellite uplink, and emergency beacon. All functional. Riley climbed the ladder to the cockpit. The seat molded around her as she strapped in. Switches and displays surrounded her in familiar patterns. This was home. This was where she belonged. Martinez's voice came through her headset from the companion aircraft parked 50 yards away. Viper 1, this is Viper 2. Radio check. Read you 5x5, Viper 2. Pre-flight complete on my end. You ready for this? Riley looked at the family photos taped to her instrument panel. For generations of Hartmans. All of them had faced their moment when everything mattered. Ready as I'll ever be. Webb's voice joined the conversation from the command center. Viper flight, you are cleared for takeoff. Mission time is 47 minutes. Weather is clear, visibility unlimited. Riley pushed the throttle forward. The F-35's engine spooled up with a deep rumble that vibrated through the cockpit. She released the brakes and rolled down the runway, gaining speed until the aircraft lifted into the dark sky. Viper 2, maintain standard flight altitude and position 10 miles east of target zone, she radioed to Martinez. Copy, Viper 1. I'll be your eyes and ears up here. Riley climbed to cruising altitude and set course for the mountains. Below, city lights gave way to empty desert, then to the jagged peaks where 2 American generals waited for rescue or death. 30 minutes into the flight, the mountains appeared on her radar screen. Massive peaks rose like teeth against the night sky. Viper 1, this is control. You are approaching the target zone. Enemy radar activity detected. Roger, control. Beginning descent to terrain following altitude. Riley pushed the stick forward and dove toward the mountains. The aircraft dropped from 30,000 feet to 500 feet in less than 2 minutes. Canyon walls flashed past her wingtips. Terrain following radar engaged, she announced. Switching to stealth configuration. The F-35 systems automatically adjusted to minimize radar signature. Engine noise dropped to a whisper. Heat signature scattered through special vents. Viper 2, I'm entering the eastern approach canyon now. Copy, Viper 1. I have you on scope. Looking good from up here. Riley banked left into the narrow canyon she had photographed months earlier. Stone walls rose on both sides, creating a corridor barely wide enough for her aircraft. She flew at 200 feet above the canyon floor, following every twist and turn. This is tighter than I remembered, she muttered. The canyon walls seemed to close in around her. Her wingtips cleared the rock faces by mere feet. One wrong move would turn the F-35 into a fireball scattered across the mountainside. Viper 1, control. Enemy communications intercepted. They're aware of increased activity in the area. Any indication they've spotted me? Negative. Radar shows no contacts in your vicinity. Riley followed the canyon deeper into the mountains. The walls grew taller and closer together. Her aircraft felt like a bullet traveling through the barrel of a gun. Target zone in 5 minutes, she announced. Through her night vision display, she saw the compound ahead. Concrete buildings surrounded by walls and guard towers. Searchlights swept the perimeter. Just as her photographs had shown. Viper 1, this is control. Satellite shows approximately 40 enemy personnel at the compound. Roger. Beginning final approach to landing zone. Riley spotted the small clearing she had identified in her surveillance photos. A natural opening in the canyon floor, maybe 70 feet across. Barely large enough for a vertical landing. She flipped the switch to convert the F-35 from conventional flight to hover mode. The engine nozzle rotated downward. Lift fans engaged in the aircraft's belly. Converting to vertical landing configuration. The aircraft shuddered as it transitioned from forward flight to hover. Riley felt the familiar sensation of the F-35 becoming a helicopter, suspended in the air by pure engine thrust. Viper 1, you're looking good. Steady hover at 50 feet. Riley began her descent into the clearing. Canyon walls rose on 3 sides. The compound lay 200 yards to the west through a narrow gap in the rocks. At 30 feet, she heard the first gunshots. Control, I'm taking small arms fire. Muzzle flashes sparkled from the compound walls. Bullets whined off the canyon rocks around her aircraft. Viper 1, abort landing. Repeat, abort and extract immediately. Riley continued her descent. 20 feet. 15 feet. 10 feet. Negative, control. I'm committed to this landing. The F-35 touched down in the clearing with a soft thud. Riley kept the engine running and the lift fan spinning. This was the most dangerous moment. On the ground, stationary, vulnerable. Viper 2, I'm on the ground. Beginning extraction phase. She popped the canopy and climbed out of the cockpit. The compound lay through a narrow passage between rock walls. No time for stealth now. Riley ran toward the gap, her sidearm drawn. Enemy voices shouted in the distance. More gunfire erupted, but most of the bullets struck the canyon walls above her head. She reached the compound's eastern wall and found a drainage pipe that led under the perimeter. Just as her photographs had indicated. Riley crawled through the pipe, emerging inside the compound's courtyard. 2 guards stood near a concrete building. Riley approached from behind and disabled both with swift, silent strikes. She dragged their unconscious bodies into the shadows. The building had one entrance. Heavy wooden door with iron hinges. Riley tested the handle. Locked. She pulled a small explosive charge from her flight suit and attached it to the door lock. 3 seconds later, the charge detonated with a sharp crack. The door swung open. Inside, 2 figures sat tied to chairs in a small room. General Hayes and General Chen, both alive but looking exhausted. Generals, I'm Captain Hartman, United States Air Force. I'm here to get you out. General Hayes looked up at her with recognition. Captain Hartman? You're supposed to be grounded. Yes, ma'am. We can discuss my career situation after we're airborne. Riley cut their bonds with a tactical knife. Both generals stood on shaky legs. Can you walk? We can run if necessary, Chen replied. Gunfire erupted outside the building. Enemy soldiers had discovered the unconscious guards. Running is necessary. Follow me. Riley led them through the door and across the courtyard. Searchlights swept the area, looking for intruders. She guided the generals through the drainage pipe and into the canyon passage. More gunfire echoed off the rock walls. Shouts grew louder behind them. Viper 2, this is Viper 1. I have the packages. Requesting immediate extraction support. Martinez's voice crackled through her radio. Viper 1, enemy forces are converging on your position. Multiple vehicles approaching from the north. Riley and the generals reached the clearing where the F-35 waited, engine running, lift fan spinning. Generals, have either of you flown in an F-35 before? No, Hayes replied. First time for everything. Get in behind my seat. It'll be tight, but it's only for 30 minutes. Riley helped both generals climb into the cockpit. The aircraft was designed for one pilot, but the rear compartment could accommodate 2 passengers in an emergency. Bullets began striking the aircraft's armored skin. Viper 2, I'm taking effective fire. Beginning vertical takeoff immediately. Riley climbed into the pilot's seat and strapped in. She pushed the throttle to maximum power. The F-35 lifted off the canyon floor like an elevator rising between the stone walls. At 50 feet, a rocket-propelled grenade streaked past her cockpit window. At 100 feet, machine gun fire traced bright lines through the darkness around her aircraft. At 200 feet, she was above the canyon rim and transitioning back to conventional flight. Control, this is Viper 1. Packages secured. Departing target zone now. Webb's voice came through her headset, thick with relief. Outstanding work, Viper 1. Medical teams are standing by for the generals. Riley banked the F-35 toward home, leaving the mountains behind. In the rear seat, both generals sat quietly, probably processing their rescue by the pilot one of them had personally grounded. General Hayes, Riley said into her intercom. Yes, Captain. Ma'am, we need to talk when we get back. Hayes was quiet for a moment. Yes, Captain. I believe we do. The F-35 climbed toward the stars, carrying 3 people who had learned that sometimes the most important missions require breaking all the rules. Behind them, searchlights swept empty canyon walls where America's most unconventional rescue had just succeeded. The F-35 touched down at Andrews Air Force Base as dawn broke over Washington. Medical teams waited on the tarmac with stretchers and equipment. Riley shut down the engine and popped the canopy. General Chen climbed out first, moving slowly but under his own power. General Hayes followed, accepting help from a medic. Both looked exhausted but alert. Generals, medical will check you out, Riley said, removing her helmet. I'll be available for debriefing whenever you're ready. Hayes stopped and turned back to her. Captain, walk with me. Riley glanced at the medical team. Ma'am, you should get checked out first. I've been checked out by enemy interrogators for the past 18 hours. I think I can handle a conversation. They walked away from the aircraft toward a quiet corner of the hangar. Webb approached but Hayes waved him off. Colonel, give us a few minutes. Webb nodded and stepped back. Hayes sat on a maintenance cart and rubbed her wrists where the ropes had been. Captain, do you know why you were grounded? Because I violated direct orders during a rescue mission. That's part of it. What else? Riley thought about the document Thompson had shown her. Hayes's signature recommending her removal from active flight status. Because I'm reckless. Because I can't follow protocols. Because I'm unsuitable for military aviation. Hayes smiled. You read my report. Admiral Thompson showed it to me before the mission. And you still came to rescue me. Yes, ma'am. Hayes stood up and walked to the hangar window. Outside, ground crews were already inspecting the F-35 for battle damage. Captain, did it ever occur to you that your capture mission might have been intentional? Riley felt confused. Ma'am? General Chen and I weren't captured during a diplomatic mission. We were captured during a reconnaissance mission. A mission designed to draw out enemy defensive positions and tactical capabilities. I don't understand. Hayes turned from the window. We allowed ourselves to be taken so we could observe their security procedures firsthand. Radio communications, guard rotations, facility layouts. Intelligence that could only be gathered from inside their compound. Riley stared at her. You deliberately got captured? Sometimes the best way to gather intelligence is from the inside. Sometimes the most effective military operations look like failures to everyone watching. But the rescue attempts. The soldiers who died trying to reach you. Hayes's expression grew serious. Those were genuine attempts using conventional methods. We needed the enemy to believe our capture was accidental. The casualties were real, and I carry the weight of those losses. Riley walked to a nearby workbench and leaned against it. So my rescue mission was the plan from the beginning. We needed someone who could fly an unconventional approach. Someone who had detailed knowledge of enemy positions. Someone willing to ignore standard procedures. Someone you had grounded for ignoring standard procedures. Exactly. Riley looked at the F-35 sitting on the tarmac. You grounded me to make me available for this mission. I grounded you because your methods were dangerous and undisciplined. But I also grounded you because I recognized something in your approach to flying that reminded me of myself at your age. Hayes sat back down on the maintenance cart. Captain, 30 years ago I was exactly like you. Maverick pilot who thought the rules didn't apply to her. I broke more protocols than I followed. Nearly got myself killed half a dozen times. What changed? I learned that the best leaders know when to follow rules and when to break them. I learned that real military innovation comes from understanding why the rules exist before you decide to ignore them. Riley pushed off from the workbench. So the grounding was training? The grounding was punishment. But it was also preparation. You needed to understand the cost of your methods. The responsibility that comes with making decisions that affect other people's lives. Webb approached them, carrying a manila folder. Generals, Admiral Thompson needs to debrief you both. Hayes nodded. In a moment, Colonel. She turned back to Riley. Captain, what did you learn from this mission? Riley thought about the canyon flight. The precision required. The lives depending on her decisions. The moment when following orders and breaking orders had been the same thing. I learned that being right isn't enough. You have to be right at the right time, for the right reasons, with the right support. And I learned that the Hartman family tradition isn't about being a maverick or a rule follower. It's about serving something bigger than yourself. Hayes smiled. Now you're ready to be the pilot I always knew you could be. Webb handed Riley the manila folder. Captain, your new assignment orders. Riley opened the folder and read the first page. Assignment to the Air Force Test Pilot School. Instructor position. Training the next generation of military aviators. Ma'am, this is a promotion. This is a responsibility. You'll be teaching young pilots how to think creatively within military structure. How to innovate without being reckless. How to break rules when breaking them serves the mission. Riley closed the folder. On the hangar wall, a sign read, Excellence in all we do. For generations of Hartmans had lived by those words, each in their own way. General, why did you really recommend me for grounding? Hayes stood up and straightened her uniform. Because I saw a pilot who could be extraordinary if she learned the difference between courage and recklessness. Between innovation and insubordination. Between serving herself and serving her country. She walked toward the hangar exit, then turned back. Besides, someone had to be available to rescue two generals who were foolish enough to get themselves captured on purpose. Riley watched Hayes leave, then looked at her assignment orders again. Test Pilot School. Instructor position. A chance to shape the future of military aviation. Webb approached her. Congratulations, Captain. You earned this. Riley folded the orders and put them in her pocket. Marcus, do you think I'm ready for this? I think you're the only person who can do it. You understand both sides now. Rules and innovation. Discipline and creativity. Following orders and knowing when orders need to be changed. Riley walked to the hangar window and looked at the F-35. Her aircraft. Her successful mission. Her bridge between the pilot she had been and the leader she was becoming. On the tarmac, ground crews were already preparing the aircraft for its next mission. Whatever that mission would be, Whoever would fly it, they would benefit from the intelligence gathered by 2 generals brave enough to get captured and 1 pilot brave enough to rescue them. Riley smiled. The Hartman family tradition was in good hands. Outside, the sun climbed higher over Andrews Air Force Base, where America's next generation of pilots would learn that the greatest military victories come from knowing when to follow the manual and when to throw it away. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of courage.